All right, welcome back. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're not just looking at history. We are solving a literary mystery. We're going to investigate an entire era of English literature. I'm talking its key players, its major conflicts, its whole identity, and we're going to do it using just one very unexpected piece of evidence.
And this is it. This is our source for the entire investigation today, an old English literature exam paper. Now, it looks pretty standard, right? Just a list of multiple-choice questions. But we're going to treat this thing not as a test, but as a kind of treasure map full of clues. We're the detectives, and this paper, it's our only lead to cracking the case of a really fascinating literary period.
So this leads us to our central mystery. Can a document like this, something that just seems like a random collection of questions, actually help us piece together the story of an entire historical age? I mean, it seems a little unlikely, but hey, that's what we're here to find out. So let's start the investigation.
Every good investigation needs a starting point, right? Before we can figure out the what and the who, we absolutely have to figure out the when. We need to find a clue, anything, that can anchor us in time. So let's start combing through the evidence for our first big break.
Okay, so our first mission is to sift through all these questions, and we're looking for anything that points to a specific date or maybe a major historical event. Just one single fixed point is all we need to start building our timeline.
And here it is, question 76. It asks for the publication date of the authorized version of the Bible, which, of course, we now know as the King James Bible. Now, this might seem like just a simple trivia question, but trust me, this is our first major break. This one fact is the historical landmark that's going to unlock this entire era for us.
So the King James Bible was published in 1611, and that, right there, drops us squarely in the reign of King James I. This was a period of huge transition in England. I mean, the Elizabethan Golden Age is over, a new dynasty, the Stuarts, is on the throne, and most importantly, it sets the stage for the reign of James's son, Charles, who took the throne in 1625.
And just like that, we've identified the era. The period right after King James is named for his son, King Charles I. See, Carolus is the Latin for Charles, and that's where we get the name the Caroline Age. So from just one question about the Bible, we figured out our time period, 1625 to 1649. We have officially solved the when.
Okay, so we've got our time period, we've got the setting for our story. But a story is nothing without its characters, right? Who were the writers, the poets, the key figures who are actually defining the literature of the Caroline Age? Well, it's time to go back to our evidence.
That exam paper has to hold a clue about the main literary movement of this time. We're looking for a name, a group, maybe a school of thought, anything that can tell us who the big players were. What's our next lead?
Bingo! Question 85 gives us our next critical piece of evidence. And it doesn't just give us names, it gives us a name for the whole group, the Cavalier poets. Now that is our primary lead to understanding the artistic soul of the era. The term itself, Cavalier, it sounds pretty grand, maybe a little bit defiant, doesn't it?
And look at this, the question even provides us with a lineup of our main literary suspects. We've got Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, and John Suckling. These are the names we need to investigate. These are the men who shaped the poetry of the age.
So what's the correct answer to the exam question? Turns out it's D, more than one of the above. And that confirms it. All three of these poets, they all belong to this central group. They weren't just isolated artists, no. They were part of a very distinct literary and cultural movement.
And here's what it actually meant to be a Cavalier. They were royalists, they were huge supporters of King Charles I, and their poetry totally reflected this allegiance. It was often witty and charming, very polished, focusing on themes like carpe diem, seize the day, but also honor, love, and loyalty to their king. For them, art and politics were completely intertwined. Now think about this for a second. If you have a group that's defined as supporters of the king, that immediately implies that there's another side, right? An opposition. And this is where the story gets all of its tension. The Caroline Age wasn't just about elegant poetry, it was an era of deep, simmering conflict.
And this just perfectly illustrates the two sides of a divided nation. On one side, you have the Cavaliers, royalists who believed in the divine right of the king, and they wrote this secular poetry about seizing the day. And on the other side, you've got the Puritans, or the parliamentarians, deeply religious, morally stern, and they believed Parliament should have more power. They wrote in a plain, direct style that served God.
This wasn't just a political debate, people. This is a full-blown culture war that would eventually explode into an actual civil war.
So, we've followed the clues, we've established the time, we've identified the main characters, and we've uncovered the huge conflict that defined their entire world. I think it's time to put it all together and finally close the case on the Caroline Age.
So here it is, our final report. The Caroline Age was the period of King Charles I's rule. Its literature was totally dominated by the Cavalier poets, those royalists who wrote with such style and elegance. But this entire era was shaped by the escalating conflict between those Cavaliers and their opponents, the Puritans, a conflict that ultimately led to the tragedy of the English Civil War and the execution of the very king this age was named after.
And let's just take a step back and not forget where we started. This rich, dramatic, incredibly complex picture of an entire literary and historical era, all of it, we pieced it all together, clue by clue, from a simple exam paper. It just goes to show you that history isn't just in the big textbooks. Sometimes it's hidden in the everyday documents all around us.
So, the next time you see a test or a receipt or maybe an old letter, take a closer look. What story is it just waiting to tell? What secrets are hiding there in plain sight, just waiting for a detective like you to come along and crack the case?